The idea to make this video came to me one night when I couldn't sleep. After tossing and turning for hours, I grabbed a manga from my bedside table that a friend had given me. Weirdly, its protagonist was experiencing the exact opposite problem. The story opens with a man, Mukoda, describing his sleep disorder to a doctor. But he wasn't suffering from insomnia, rather he was having nightmares he couldn't wake up from. Mukoda explains how he'd have long nightmares spanning vast stretches of time in the course of a single night. At first, the dreams would seem to last a month or so. But gradually, they began to cover years, then decades. It was becoming increasingly difficult for him to remember what had happened just the previous day. Reality now seemed like a string of insignificant memory fragments, while his dreams felt like they were becoming increasingly bizarre and real. Accompanied by his doctor, Mukoda's dreams continued for centuries, and eventually even thousands of years. His appearance and behavior become increasingly unintelligible, as though he was aging, evolving somehow, having existed such an unfathomably long period of time. One night, while everyone else is asleep, Mukoda experiences his final nightmare. This time, he dreams eternity. His body, too old to keep pace with his dreams, shatters into crystals which the doctors quietly conceal, lest they have great importance in the future. This is one of Junji Ito's famous short stories, Long Dream. Likely many of you have read this one before. As a rational adult who doesn't believe in ghosts and spirits, who frequently reads horror manga, I'm very curious as to how Ito-sensei can terrify me so much in just 20 or 30 pages. What is so unique about the so-called Junji Ito style manga? As a big fan of the horror genre, it's natural that Junji Ito was influenced by classic horror movies. But if there's one thing in common among the films that inspired him, you could describe it as body horror. Body horror is a subgenre of horror that emerged in the 1970s. Simply put, it was a small cinematic movement in which a group of deviant filmmakers used grotesque or psychologically disturbing violations and contortions of the human body to critique social norms. So, why does Junji Ito use the human body as a main element in his manga? According to him, body horror is different from a ghost story. It is physical. It really exists, can be touched and perceived. No one can escape pain or the corruption of our human bodies. It combines extreme beauty with extreme horror. There are different ways to represent beauty and horror in art. In my opinion, Ito's solution for his hand-drawn manga is to use short, densely packed lines, expressing the textures of his characters' limbs and skin. He calls this drawing style white space phobia.
書きながら、こうした方がいいなとかやり出すとどんどんエスカレートしてですね、グロテスクになっちゃうんですけど、もうこういうのが楽しいです。私の場合なんか白いところがあると埋めちゃいます、怖くて。余白恐怖症というか。
Such densely packed line work not only expresses characters' limbs and skin, but also represents an important part of the environment. While many mangakas tend to ignore environments in close-up scenes, Ito is obsessed with them. He likes to add incredibly detailed backgrounds to almost every panel, as the atmosphere created by the environment plays a critical role in horror stories. How important are these lines exactly? Perhaps the answer is best given through comparison. This classic scene is from the anime adaptation of Long Dream, the first chapter in the manga collection Horror World of Junji Ito Volume 14. We can see the line work on the character's head and arm has been greatly simplified. It fails to properly capture the dreadful, fractured texture of his skin. Meanwhile, the line work in the background of the panel, which deepens the contrast in the shot, has been replaced by a curtain. Worse still, the anime seeks to play up the horror by just darkening the scene. Thus, the entire composition loses all sense of weight and impact. An important detail to note is the only blank space left in this panel, the character's eyes, highlighting them as the focal point of the scene. Again and again, we see those eyes, those restless, worried eyes, those mad, vacant eyes. Unable to rely on sound effects or music, Ito uses his character's eyes as the primary means of expressing atmosphere. Just looking at them makes us feel that something is definitely wrong. As I said in a previous video, in horror movies, the key to a successful scare is not the moment of the scare itself, but the tension created before it. The best directors are the ones who can make an audience hold their breath, waiting to be scared, not forced to be scared. This also applies to horror manga. Ito makes good use of the fact that when reading a manga, the reader must turn the pages. By placing a reaction shot on the page before the scare, Ito adds a further layer of suspense to his stories. That brief moment between first seeing these eyes and then turning the page is the most breathtaking in the whole reading process. This is, of course, a very common technique in comics. In manga, page layouts are often drafted in pairs, so that the plot of every 2 pages contains a series of events that culminate in a payoff delivered after the page turn. This keeps the reader engaged and stimulates a desire to keep turning the pages. But I digress. Technique might be important, but it is, of course, stories that matter most. We read manga for their plot, after all. The way I see it, there's another important factor as to why Ito features human bodies as the main elements of his creations. In his stories, the protagonists always seem to be consumed with an obsession for something. The Tomi series revolves around a possessive obsession with a beautiful, immortal woman. It is a desperate desire for love and the self-destructive revenge of unrequited love we see in Lovesick Dead. In Glyceride, the younger brother who is ignored by his classmates has an addictive obsession with grease. Flesh-colored horror and layers of fear focus on their protagonists' obsessions with morbid aesthetics. In all these stories, characters descend into madness, and their twisted mental states eventually manifest physically through distortions of their bodies. In all his work, I think the one that best exemplifies Ito's brilliant interpretation of obsession is one of his longer stories, Uzumaki, or Spiral. Here, an entire town falls into cult-like worship of a mysterious shape. The protagonist, Shuichi Saito's father, collects swirling objects and is fascinated with spiral patterns in nature. Even the ripples that appear when stirring soup with chopsticks can make him feel at ease. One day, Shuichi discovers that his father has stopped collecting swirling objects because he has himself turned into one. The swirls continue to spread in the town like a curse, and the narrative unfolds like a vortex. Children show off their curly hair to each other. A girl's scars gradually become warped. Students turn into snails on a rainy day. Lovers wind their bodies together permanently. Even rows of houses coil themselves into whorls. Gradually, the town is devoured by swirls. People lose all sense of identity, morality, and free will. Even the notions of time and space are lost. Following a long, winding corridor, our protagonist eventually finds the entrance to some ancient ruins. From there, the swirls begin to turn inwards, towards the bottom of the story. Buried deep beneath the town is a strange, underground space constructed in ancient times. Here we see massive, spiral-shaped pillars, which radiate a dazzling light as if they were alive, beckoning people towards their center. Over the centuries, the town's residents are influenced by these pillars, gradually transforming themselves. And once the transformation is complete, a new town will rise. Yet the curse that envelops the town remains, like a whirlpool spinning endlessly around. Town residents eventually undertake pilgrimages to this underground place, devoting their bodies as sacrifices. Audiences familiar with the Cthulhu mythos will have noticed some similarities by now. Ito has admitted in several interviews that Uzumaki's setting and atmosphere are deeply influenced by H.P. Lovecraft's work. This is why you can often see homages to Uzumaki in Lovecraftian video games. If we were to discuss manga in the context of the Cthulhu mythos, then I would argue that Junji Ito's uniqueness lies in his ability to visualize the unknown and incomprehensible aspects of Lovecraftian horror, while retaining a sense of humanity so often missing from such stories. At the end of the story, Shuichi falls to the bottom of a chasm, while Kirie, who had a chance to return to the surface, chooses to remain underground with her love. They twist and coil together like the lovers in the town. And the huge underground ruins corkscrew themselves into the earth in the form of a spiral. The town is quiet once more. In discussing the Cthulhu mythos and the cosmic horrors that transcend human cognition, we confront our fears about our powerlessness in the face of the vastness of the universe, that our will and all that we have built is meaningless. And if this fear eventually strikes us, perhaps we'll come to witness the same story Junji Ito has shown us at the bottom of the spiral. Thank you for watching. We are G-Cores, a gaming community that's also interested in movies. There's no judgment here, only love. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and we have many more exciting videos on the way, so we look forward to seeing you next time.